Most people think governments run the world. They imagine presidents, parliaments, elections. But quietly, without a vote, without a press conference, something else happened. Banks stopped being just banks, and governments stopped being fully in control. This wasn't a hostile takeover. There were no coups, no secret meetings in dark rooms. It was a deal, a quiet one, and almost no one noticed when it happened. Today, that deal shapes your money, your job, your future, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's rewind. For most of history, governments were simple creatures. They taxed, they spent, and when they ran out of money, they faced consequences. Kings raised taxes, empires seized land, wars ended when treasuries were empty. Money was physical: gold, silver, coins you could touch. If a ruler spent too much, the gold ran out. That was the limit. Then, something changed. Running a modern state became expensive. Armies got bigger, bureaucracies expanded, wars became industrial. Gold wasn't enough anymore, so governments discovered borrowing. At first, it looked harmless. They borrowed from wealthy merchants, promised interest, paid it back with future taxes. But lending to governments was risky. Kings defaulted, empires collapsed, lenders got wiped out. So lenders demanded protection. And that's where banks enter the story. In the late 1600s, England made a breakthrough. Instead of borrowing randomly, it partnered with a permanent institution, the Bank of England. Private investors lent money to the state. In return, the state guaranteed repayment, and the bank got a special privilege. It could create money, not gold, promises. This was revolutionary. The government could now spend money it didn't physically have, and banks could profit by financing the state itself. At first, this power was limited, but the seed was planted. Fast forward a few centuries, the world is bigger, economies are faster, wars are global. Gold becomes inconvenient, so countries quietly abandon it. By the 20th century, money is no longer backed by metal, it's backed by trust. And who manages that trust? Central banks. They sound boring, technical, neutral. They're not. A central bank sits between the government and the banking system. Officially, it's independent. Unofficially, it's essential. Here's how the deal works in plain language. Governments want to spend more than they collect in taxes. Always have, always will. Banks want safe assets that earn interest, something reliable, something guaranteed. Government debt solves both problems. When a government needs money, it issues bonds, IOUs. Banks buy them, funds buy them, central banks buy them. Now here's the key part. When central banks buy government bonds, they don't use saved money. They create money. Digits appear out of nothing.
The government gets funding. Banks get interest-paying assets. Markets stay liquid. Everyone looks satisfied. But look closer. The government is now dependent on markets to function, and markets are dependent on central banks to stay calm. If investors lose confidence, interest rates rise. Borrowing gets expensive. Budgets break. So governments adjust policy to keep markets happy, not voters, markets. This is where the roles blur. Banks don't just lend to governments, they discipline them. A country that spends too much gets punished with higher borrowing costs. A country that follows market expectations gets rewarded. No election required. Central banks step in during crises. They lower rates, they buy assets, they stabilize markets. But stabilization has a price. Every rescue teaches markets that risk will be absorbed, losses will be softened, failures will be managed. Over time, this changes behavior. Banks take bigger risks, governments borrow more, debt grows. And because central banks are the backstop, the system keeps expanding. This is the uncomfortable math. Debt isn't meant to be paid off, it's meant to be rolled over. New debt replaces old debt. Interest is serviced. The principal stays. Governments become permanent borrowers. Banks become permanent financiers of the state. At some point, the question stops being, can we repay this, and becomes, can we keep confidence alive? That's the real currency now, confidence. And confidence is fragile. When things go wrong, central banks act fast. They inject liquidity. They calm panic. But notice what they don't do. They don't vote. They don't campaign. They don't explain themselves to the public in plain terms. Yet their decisions affect inflation, housing, wages, savings. This is the irony. Governments are accountable to voters. Banks are accountable to shareholders. Central banks are accountable mostly to stability. So when inflation rises, governments blame supply chains, banks blame policy, central banks blame expectations. Meanwhile, ordinary people feel prices rising faster than paychecks.
And the system keeps moving. This is why it feels like no one is in charge. Because in a way, no one fully is. Power is distributed across balance sheets, interest rates, and confidence loops. Banks don't officially govern, but governments can't function without them. Governments don't officially serve banks, but policies are shaped by financial reactions. It's not corruption in the movie sense, it's alignment. The system rewards behaviors that keep debt flowing and markets calm, and punishes anything that threatens the flow. That's the quiet deal. Banks finance governments. Governments protect the financial system. Central banks hold it together. And everyone agrees not to talk too loudly about the risks. Because once confidence breaks, everything becomes visible. Currencies fall, capital flees, politics turns chaotic. History has shown this again and again. From debt crises to inflation spirals to emergency bailouts framed as necessity. Each time, the system survives, but with more debt than before. So here's the uncomfortable question. If banks now shape government behavior and governments rely on banks to survive, who is actually in charge? And more importantly, what happens when trust runs out faster than money can be created? That question doesn't have an answer yet, and that's what makes it dangerous. Because the most powerful systems are the ones everyone depends on, but no one fully controls. And once you see that, you start watching the world differently.